Welcome to our Pelvic Floor 101. It's really important we're having this session because so many women are too embarrassed to talk about incontinence or their pelvic floor. And today we want to think about how the pelvic floor works to prevent incontinence and debunk a few of the myths around it as well.
Yes.
I think one of the first things that people get puzzled about is that it's not normal. So it's common, but it's not normal.
Well, I would say it's quite normal because it's quite common.
It's quite very common
against, from young to old, I would say.
Yeah, it is common. It affects 1 in 3 women.
One in 3? I didn't think it was that much.
Yeah, and 1 in 9 men.
Oh, really?
Yeah, could have a bladder or a bowel leakage problem.
Ooh.
But it's not normal because it's not something you should expect to have, and it's not something you should feel that you need to live with. And lots of people are living with something that they could make better and they could cure it.
Yeah, because they find it embarrassing to admit it.
Yeah. It can take 7 years for somebody to go to see their doctor about it.
Oh, really?
Because they're that embarrassed.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah. And because it can start mild and just be a small inconvenient problem, you can put it off.
Yeah.
And you can put it off. And you can put it off.
But do you think it's a passing problem with stress or with exercise?
Yeah, I suppose so, because mine happened after having kids, and my kids are still very young. And so, although I don't have a big problem, if I go on a trampoline, if I do star jumps, something like that, then I might have an issue. But it doesn't affect me day to day. And I suppose I've kind of just thought, it will just get better, because I've only just had my kids fairly recently. It will get better. I won't have this forever. It will get better. It will get better. But maybe.
And is it getting better?
I just don't go on trampolines very much.
So that's one of the ways people cope with it, is they dodge the thing that's going to catch them out. And it might get better with time. A lot does get better with time. But often you've got to do something about it. And you've got to change what's going on with the muscles so that they can cope with going on the trampoline or a big sneeze. That leaking when you cough. That leaking when you cough or you sneeze or something high impact like jumping, that's called stress incontinence. And it's not to do with being stressed yourself. It's stress on the bladder, and that little bit of leakage gets out. Tends to be quite small, but if your bladder was full, it could be quite a big leak.
It could be a disaster.
And that's a problem with the bladder closure underneath. It doesn't close in time and doesn't stop the bladder from moving about enough when you're jumping.
Yeah.
But there's another kind of incontinence as well. Have you heard of urge incontinence?
No.
That's the one where you struggle to get to the toilet in time.
Oh, well, that's...
a bit of a rush.
Yeah, on the doorstep.
On the doorstep.
On the doorstep.
Yeah.
Trying to get the key, drop the keys, and then you're stuck there cross-legged.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh my God, I just don't leak on the carpet as you're running through the house.
And sometimes it's that worry that it's going to leak, and it never does, but you feel like it would.
Yes, and also when you want to go to the toilet, you think, no, I can get home, I won't. And then you're walking down the road and think, please, no.
Exactly.
And it's not a case of you can hold it, but then you got to that crucial... Then you relax when you get to the doorstep, and that's when it happens.
Yeah, and that's called urge incontinence. You had the really strong urge, and then you just couldn't hold it.
Yeah.
And that's because the bladder is supposed to wait till you get to the toilet. It's supposed to be able to fill and fill and fill, but sometimes it just starts going.
Yeah.
And what you're supposed to be able to do is use your muscles underneath to keep hold until you're in the right place.
But the thing is, sometimes I try to use the muscles, and then I get to the bathroom, I thought, I've made it. And then as I'm derobing myself, then because you've just relaxed,
you're just a little bit too ahead. You've relaxed a little bit too soon.
Also, I think it's a slightly different thing, because I am very into my fitness, always have been, was before kids, during pregnancy, afterwards, and I feel like I've got a very strong core, and I feel like I'm strong everywhere. But yet I still have like a little bit of leakage if I'm doing jumping and impact stuff. So, and I know how to do pelvic floor exercises, and I feel like I'm strong doing my pelvic floor exercises. Like I can hold them, because I know some women can't hold them. Like they can only hold them for a second and then it goes. I can hold it. But I still can't
quite get there.
I still have the issue, so...
Yeah, so it's possible to be really strong on the outside and even in your head feel like you're really strong on the inside. But sometimes inside it is strong, but maybe your timing's a bit off. So you jump and then you squeeze. Or you haven't quite done that final bit, which is learning how to do the exercise while you're on the trampoline, or just in time for the cough and sneeze. So that can be one problem, is that the timing's a bit out. Or another really common problem is you are trying to do the squeeze inside and you are doing it right, but somewhere inside there might be something getting in the way of the muscle working properly, like an old scar. And that can just tether the muscle down and make it difficult for it to do its job properly. Or a lot of people don't realise you can have always been gripping and gripping, and you know how you can have tight hamstrings? You can actually have too tight pelvic floor.
Oh, really?
I know, that seems really weird, doesn't it?
So that does.
And those muscles then they're so tight, they've got nowhere else to go.
Oh, I see.
And so they have to be stretched out a bit so that they can work better. So that might be why you've tried pelvic floor exercises yourself. You get so far, and with that more advanced problems like sport and jumping, sometimes you need to get somebody to check what's going on inside so that they can guide you how to get that last bit better and sort out any old scars. Or sometimes it is to do with the back's not in quite the right position. And sometimes there can be more complicated things with bladders as well.
Because one thing I've actually noticed I'm doing, before I'd run, and I'd run with strides, but now I'm running like my mum used to run, with the legs next to each other, and you see some women doing that. And I now realise I subconsciously do it because I know when I'm running, bouncing along, I might get leakage.
And we try to fix things by doing strange things like running funny or crossing our legs. But actually, there are exercises you can do that will build up the muscles and take them to another level.
More about those.
I've actually got a friend who went to see somebody because she had problems with her pelvic floor, and they suggested that she buy a sort of gadget, like a stimulator that I think you put inside you and it stimulates the muscles to work. Is that something?
That sounds like something else to me.
She's absolutely right. Some muscles are so weak that they do need help to get started. And in your head, you can be thinking you're doing this great little squeeze, but when the physio or the nurse feels inside and checks, it's actually quite a baby squeeze. And really baby squeezes need some help. So you're absolutely right. You get gadgets that can go inside that can make the muscles work for you. And you can get other gadgets that you squeeze on them and you can see lines going up and down on a little computer. You can even get some that work with your phone.
Oh, really?
So doing it yourself is the starting place, and there's great things you can do yourself. But if they're not working for you and need some more help, there are other things that you can be brought in as well. So some people find that they've stayed at home and they're not doing any sport and they're not taking part in anything anymore. So have you heard of the things that people do to help get them more active? Some people use pads to help them to feel more confident, and you can get special knickers.
Especially when I'm travelling, because, you know, sometimes you're on the plane, there's a queue for the bathroom, and that can be really frightening. Because you have to I always time it right to get to the toilet, because there's nothing worse.
And pads for incontinence are not the same as pads for periods. They're made of different materials so that they can hold liquid, because blood is thicker, so you do have to use the right thing for the right job. And because they're made of special material, they're also thinner than you might think they need to be.
Because years ago, I mean, I've invested in them years ago, and they were quite thick. But now what I find is they're thinner. You can't see them, which is fantastic. And also the liquid chain turns to crystal, which you don't have that damp feeling.
So it's really important that people aren't feeling depressed and lonely and not able to take part in sport. But we also want to make sure that anybody who could cure their problem or make it better doesn't get lazy or leave it as I don't need to do anything more. So we want to get both things. We want to get people active and get people solving their problem and seeking help and asking for help.
Because sharing it with friends is one thing where I found out a few of my friends had the same problem. And then we were able to discuss what was a solution that was working for either one of us.
It's really common. Most people that I know that have had kids have had some like even if it's just during pregnancy or straight after the birth and then it's got better or something.
Yeah.
Another misconception is that round childbirth, people expect it and they can laugh about it and you can deal with it as part of the messiness of having a baby.
It didn't leave though.
But what's the problem is if it doesn't leave, it doesn't get better.
Yes.
And did you know it can happen even before you have a baby?
Yes.
So teenagers can leak. And also when you're actually pregnant. Because what we know now is it's not just the delivery, it's the weight of the baby.
Yeah.
And you carry that weight of the baby for the whole 9 months and that weight bears down. But other things that can cause it before you have a baby would be things like having a lot of coughing or being very constipated or just generally getting really deconditioned because you have an illness or because of the way your life's going.
Yeah.
So we do find it in younger people, and it's not just people who've had babies. And later in life, it can also be around the time of the menopause because there are lots of hormone changes. And you could have not had babies ever and still have a problem at any stage in your life. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is it's only people who've had babies.
If I go to any exercise classes, star jumps are not good. I think it's the legs going out and the gravity coming down at the same time. Yeah, so that's kind of...
And you're exactly right. It's because it's those two things. You've got pressure this way and your poor pelvic floor is open.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing. The hardest one to get right.
So if I do an exercise class where there might be things like star jumps, then I'd have to probably put a pad in.
And what do you think about the word incontinence? Is there a better word, or do you think we should just be open and use the right word?
Well, it's just a word, isn't it? It's just a word. And if everybody said it more, and if everyone was a bit more open about it and actually spoke about it, it wouldn't have a stigma around it. And you'd feel comfortable saying, I suffer from incontinence, you know?
Yeah. And do you think the same? Do you think it's a word we should use more rather than euphemisms like little leaks?
Yeah, I think it's a word you can use more, but people are always embarrassed about anything to do with hair. But the word incontinence, it's like you said, it's just a word. It's a descriptive word. If you're embarrassed about it, then don't use it. Suffer in silence. But suffer in silence doesn't help you.
And I think if we use the right word, it helps us to recognise that it isn't the right thing to have.
No.
Yeah, whereas all the other words make it sound acceptable.
Yeah.
And actually we don't want to let people feel that they have to have this problem.
Yeah.
And people aren't sure what to buy, are they?
No. But more knowledge on that would be great.
So it's really important that we don't want people to be depressed and lonely and miserable because they have an incontinence problem. We want them to first get the confidence by using pads to help them to get more active and to help them feel like they can be themselves and be safe. And then we want people to take the next step, which is thinking, what could they do themselves with some exercises to improve the problem? And then if that's not working for them, to feel brave enough and confident enough to ask for help from a continence specialist like a nurse or a physiotherapist. And so if you have got any more questions, on the Tena website there are links to questions and answers and how to do pelvic floor exercises. And so we're going to do an exercise class where we can learn all the how to do it properly. And we're going to practice the classic exercises that are in all the booklets and make sure we're getting those right. But we're also going to try some of the next level up, more intermediate ones where you have to learn to coordinate your arms and your legs and your breathing as well.
Okay, that'd be fab.
Great.